Good afternoon. I'm Bianna Golodrgya in New York. In a move that further solidifies the White House's stance on gay marriage and LGBTQ civil liberties, President Obama is calling for an end to what's known as gay and transgender conversion therapies. This comes just a couple of months after a 17-year-old transgender teen, Leila Alcorn, took her own life after writing an online suicide note that religious therapists attempted to change her back to being a boy. In a statement posted last night on a whitehouse.gov petition in memory of Leila, the White House says, quote, "We share your concern about its potentially devastating effects on the lives of transgender as well as gay, lesbian, bisexual, and queer youth. As part of our dedication to protecting America's youth, this administration supports efforts to ban the use of conversion therapy for minors." Only 2 states, California and New Jersey, along with the District of Columbia, ban therapists from practicing conversion therapy on LGBTQ youth. But just this year, an additional 18 states have introduced legislation that would ban the controversial practice. One man who has been a loud voice for ending conversion therapy is James Guay. James himself went through years and years of gay conversion therapy at his church and from therapists before realizing that there wasn't anything wrong with him and nothing needed to be, quote, fixed. James is now a Los Angeles-based therapist who works with LGBTQ people coming back from homophobic backgrounds, and he's joining us live from Los Angeles. James, thank you so much for talking with me. I must imagine President Obama officially condemning the use of conversion therapy is a monumental step in the right direction for your cause.
Absolutely. I was amazed and very pleased to hear this news.
And tell me a little bit about your life. You wrote a very open and honest letter in Time magazine about your childhood, growing up in a very strict religious home. And from an early age, you knew that you were attracted to men. And quickly, both your parents and your church tried to shun that and, quote unquote, convert you, right?
That's correct. Yeah, I was brought up in a very religious, fundamental sort of Christian background. And all the messages that I heard growing up was that to be gay, to have same-sex attractions, meant that I would be,
You couldn't go to heaven, right?
I couldn't go to heaven,
right.
Exactly.
And that basically summed it up. I mean, at the end of the day, your parents, out of their love for you and out of their devotion to their religion, believed that you wouldn't be able to have an afterlife with them. Not only would it hurt your current life here on earth, but the afterlife as well. Exactly.
Yeah. And so it's, oftentimes these things are misguided approaches to try and save people's eternal life. It can come from a well-intended place and a place of love, even if it does a lot of destruction in the process.
And they sent you to a therapist who was a former, he called himself gay turned straight therapist. Can you tell us a little bit about what some of those sessions were like? I can imagine how confusing that must have been for you in your adolescence.
Yeah, very confusing. And, just to give a little bit of a background, before that, I actually tried to change on my own accord by reading the Bible a couple times through with my family, going to every church service I could, praying, like Obama wrote, at night I could not go to sleep, praying for God to take this away from me. The fact that my parents took me to an ex-gay Christian psychologist was actually welcome on my part. I wanted it. I wanted a psychological explanation and solution for my same-sex attractions.
And as a psychologist yourself now, can you talk about some of the misnomers and stereotypes that were developed throughout this process for yourself and people like you, thinking that they could be cured? I mean, we saw it in movies. I remember the film Far From Heaven. Dennis Quaid went to a doctor to help him become ungay. That took place in the 1950s. We're talking about 2015, and people are still having this discussion.
Right. Yeah, it's pretty amazing, isn't it? Yeah, as a licensed marriage and family therapist, I have worked with a lot of individuals and experienced myself through the ex-gay sort of what I like to call cult, the ex-gay ministries, the gay conversion therapy, the gender conversion therapy, that they promote stereotypes and myths about what it's like to be LGBTQ, that we can't, for whatever reason, be healthy and happy and live fulfilling lives, which just is not true. So a lot of the stereotypes that, we're more likely to become, addicted to drugs or alcohol, or have all kinds of different sects that can put us in harm's way, or can't have a long-term, fulfilling, committed relationship that's happy. All these stereotypes are used to try and convince, clients that they really do need to change, and if they don't, they're not going to be happy about it.
I wanted to ask you about a licensed family therapist who disagrees with what President Obama has said. David Pickham, he's a therapist in your state of California and in Texas as well. And he said that minors should never be forced into therapy, but he insisted that being gay was often brought about by serious emotional problems or sexual abuse, meaning that children may not know if they're attracted to somebody for a reason that's healthy for them. Can you see where he's coming from, and does he have a point?
That's one of those stereotypes, that being gay, being lesbian, being bisexual, transgender comes from some sort of abusive experience. But the research does just not prove that. There is no science to prove that that's the case.
But on the flip side, I mean, he goes on to say to the president, wake up and understand the rights of people who don't know anything, he doesn't know anything about, and need his help and need his compassion. I mean, that seems to be in what he's saying, that it's reverse racism here.
Right. And, I think it's a logical argument, but it doesn't hold weight, because even if someone, let's say that the nurturing environment it caused someone to be LGBTQ, that can be a gift that's given to someone. And the fact that, they're using that to promote the possibility that people can change, or that finding a root cause means that people can change, just does not play out in facts.
You mentioned you grew up in a very religious household. A lot of these patients at conversion therapy come from religious families as well. Do you blame religion for creating this situation?
Well, there is responsibility with some people's misinterpretation of religious texts as it relates to LGBTQ people. So most, if not all, people who are desiring to change their sexual orientation or gender identity do have some religious motivation. And most of the providers that provide this treatment also are of a religious affiliation. But I also think it's important to recognize that there are plenty of welcoming and affirming churches and synagogues, and that there are plenty of people in the religious community that welcome, support, and appreciate the value that LGBTQ people bring to society at large.
And this really highlights the evolution, as I mentioned in the intro, of President Obama's views on homosexuality, whether you date back to 2008, where he didn't believe in gay marriage. Now he does. We saw the fight in Indiana about the Religious Freedom Restoration Act. Do you think that sexuality and religion are going to be two of the big issues that are going to come up in the 2016 presidential election? And does that surprise you?
One of the things I'd like to convey is that even, Republicans are in support of banning this conversion therapy in many different states, because it's just so obviously harmful and fraudulent. And
do you always label it as homophobia? If some people, especially different generations that are just not accustomed to this, do you respect their need to slowly take it all in, or to not, right out of the gate say, oh, I understand what's going on?
Well, I think it's important to come back to what's essential for all of us, that we all want to love and be loved. And so there's a process with understanding that same-sex attraction and gender diversity is part of the rainbow of our lived experiences. It's not true for everyone, but it's true for sexual and gender minorities. And to become a more loving and caring society, we need to respect all members of our society.
And you talk about it in your personal story, the recent passing of your father, our condolences for that. There was a bit of closure that you had with him. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, you know, right before he passed away, he wanted me to know that he believed I was going to heaven. He believed that I did, in fact, ask Jesus into my life at age 4, and because of that, that I would be permitted to live in heaven for eternity with God, and he'd meet me there. So I think that was his way of saying, you know, that he'd evolved on this issue. He still probably felt like I was sinning and all that, but that I would still be welcome in heaven was a huge step for him, and a very loving act.
It's a confirmation that love really can conquer all. I want to end this interview by getting your thoughts on what Valerie Jarrett had posted on the whitehouse.gov in addition to the statement that we read at the top. Tonight, somewhere in America, a young person, let's say a young man, will struggle to fall to sleep, wrestling alone with a secret he's held as long as he can remember. Soon, perhaps, he will decide it's time to let that secret out. What happens next depends on him, his family, as well as his friends and teachers and his community. But it also depends on us, on the kind of society we engender and the kind of future we build.
I just got chills. It's a beautiful statement of appreciating all of our genuine ways of being, and the more authentic we can be in the world, the better society we are. So we need to support LGBTQ youth and adults and protect them from fraudulent and damaging practices like conversion therapy.
Really open the line of communication as well within families across the country. James, I really want to thank you for your time and your personal story and sharing it with us.
You're welcome.
And I want to thank all of you for watching. Stay with Yahoo for more on this and other stories.